Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for List Week, where we list things. Basically, throughout this week, I'm going to be talking about my favorite things of 2013, albums, EPs, music videos, singles, so on and so forth. But before we completely just plow through that, I want to give some honorable mentions. Stuff that while I did not love this year, either held my attention or had some fantastic tracks or was like, just this close to coming on my list, but I still thought was great and I didn't want the year to completely blow by without mentioning these records at the end of the year. And while I know that doing this sort of in a separate video may be a bit of a spoiler, I think these albums must be mentioned on this channel once more. Okay, so let's do it. The new Danny Brown LP, Old Danny Brown, Detroit rapper. Didn't love this LP, however, many great tracks on this thing. Another interesting, new, old, good side, bad side, light side, dark side dichotomy on this record, just like with his last full-length LP. However, on this record, much more defined, but I didn't really care for the incessant gauntlet of club tracks on the second half of this thing. Still, Danny Brown has an incredible amount of flow, style, lyrical ability, and there are some really just heavy progressive beats on this LP too that I thought were pretty great. The new James Blake album, Overgrown. Didn't enjoy this LP as much as his last LP, which you may know was sort of a grower for me. The year it was dropped, I just ended up preferring the more unorthodox direction his production took over here as opposed to over here. I do think there are some fantastic songs on this record, and I thought it was interesting that James took a lot of tracks here in a more accessible direction, and I think it gained him some more fans in the process. Still a very good album and a bit of a crossroads for James, I think, because we're kind of seeing that more singer-songwriter side of himself come into this electronic music producer side of himself, and they're forming this hybrid. Next, the new Kayo Dot record, Hubardo. If you're looking for some progressive metal, death metal, black metal, progressive rock, and like to hear these styles sort of crashed into one another violently, then this record may be for you, especially with its ambitious 100-minute runtime and just a variety of sounds and styles throughout the whole LP, and a storyline that runs from beginning to end in every single track. I did think that some of the musical and especially the vocal performances could have been better, could have been more on point, but this album does have a lot going for it. Another record that I think needed to be mentioned, another heavy record, as well as the new Nails album. Oh God, what a sonic beating this LP is. Grindcore, power violence, hardcore, just crushing guitar riffs played at such blistering paces. I did think that the band going a bit louder and a bit faster on this thing did lose some of the catchiness of their previous release, did lose some of the dynamics of their previous release. However, the band still has a pretty signature sound and their music is still very punishing. I also want to mention an album that for me was just very dumb fun, very, very dumb fun. The most dumb fun I've had all year, to be completely honest. The new A$AP Ferg album, Trap Loud. He-Man. Yeah, A$AP Ferg is not the most stellar lyricist in the world, but what I read in his delivery, in his flow, and I don't care what you've seen in interviews, I don't care what he's said to you on the street, what I read in his flow and in his delivery is just a bit of ridiculousness. So many of the hooks here and the rhymes are just so outlandish, I find them a little hilarious. And I really like the production on this thing too. And finally, the new Death Grips album, Government Plates. I know when I reviewed this thing, a lot of people were like, "Urgh." But to be completely honest, I've moved on. I'm not really thinking about this record anymore. I think while there were tracks on this thing that I didn't like at all, I think some of the songs on here, especially the first 3 or 4, are some of Death Grip's best tracks yet. So I don't really have any reason not to go into their next LP with just as much excitement as what I went into this LP with. It's not like I'm just kind of sitting here thinking, how could you? Death Grip still has a sound, a style, and a direction. I just didn't care for this LP as much as their previous releases. Those are my honorable mentions of the year. Transition, if you want, head down there into the comments and let me know what records or artists this year you like quite a bit, but maybe they didn't quite make your favorites list of this year. What artists, what albums just you liked, but you didn't love them. that's it. That's it. Oh, and the new Underachievers mixtape, Indigoism, that was pretty good. That was actually really good. Yeah. All right. All right. Anthony Fantano, honorable mentions forever.